that we are headed for here. This is where our port is going to be. It's where that red star is.
Cái Saint Nicholas Church.
Năm sáu.
Are we still in the back? Can we shut that music off? Anybody back there? Okay, I apologize for that. We may have music. I'll ask them again later. All right, there's your conversion. $1 US, 56 pesos.
Did you check to see if they take American money?
I think they did take American money. There. How'd you do with that, by the way? I mean, yesterday we got off. There were places where you could exchange. I was on an excursion up to the mountain, and we didn't really have any exchange opportunities there, but they still took U.S. dollars. And I am almost positive that they're going to take U.S. dollars while you're there. And if they don't, and you have to do an exchange, at least you've got a ballpark idea. If they hand you 24,000 pesos, you just made a killing. That would be anomalous, right? $25,000. Here's what the cruise ship terminal looks like. Picture of the ship while it's in port right there. And unlike the other two ports that we went to, you're going to be right in there, which is going to be nice. That's what it looks like coming off the ship. You're only missing the line. Probably not an exact picture of what that looks like. I think it'll be pretty quick. I think we'll be pretty quick there. All right, we could have a little performance out there. There's people getting off the ship, not too bad. All right, amenities in the terminal. Here we're going to have a terminal. We're going to be able to walk right off. Few amenities there, restaurants and so forth, but I have a feeling most people are going to be headed straight out. And here are a few ways to get around. How many people have got excursions that they're doing? Okay, good. And anybody just going to walk around, explore on your own? That's what I'm going to do. They've got an MRT system here as well. You've got a few different choices. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can grab this one, a jeepney.
The jeepney fun.
All on there. They've got little three-wheelers, cabs as well. And how many people use Grab, just out of curiosity?
Thì cái xe đó là
Jeepney là cái xe này nè, hồi đó mình đi đó, đi quắt nó xuống giống như bên
xe dưới đó hả?
After the taxi, that's the jeepney.
Second.
Yeah, the middle. Jeepney đó, nó có rêu này, MRT.
And then of course you've got this transportation. There you can do a donkey cart as well. That's going to be in that park, that Rizal Park. It's become that used to be obviously used to be a common form of transportation in the area. Now it's more for tourists. Rizal Park. Here's another map. You can grab a shot of it if you want. Our terminal is going to be right down here. Rizal Park sits right here. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And then you've got the intramurals, this whole area right here. And this is the old town. This is where, we're going to talk about this. This is where the tourists like to head. How many people have been to the Philippines before? Just out of curiosity, a few. Okay. And Manila has several different periods here. It's got the Spanish colonial period. This is where the intramurals area is where you'll see the Spanish wall that was built there 400 years ago for the original wall during the port. Then it has the American occupation that took place from 1898 all the way until the 1960s, until the end of, and finally until the end of World War II. And then of course that intramurals area, which is that walled city. And this is going to be walkable for us. There are two structures there. You've got Fort Santiago and the San Agustin Church. We'll talk about those in a minute. That's an UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's the oldest stone church in the Philippines. That would be very interesting to visit, and it's all within walking distance. Also, as you're traveling around, you're going to see some of the influence. So you've got the Spanish influence from that period, and then you're going to see the American influence during their occupation. You'll see some of the modernizations that took place. And Manila's Central Post Office is one of the iconic architectural features and landmarks in Manila, and the Metropolitan Theater too. And all those structures and buildings that you'll see have been influenced by American culture. All right, I put together this little kind of walking map if you want to grab
Okay,
it.
that's good.
That.
That's good. Đó.
Um,
Làm giống như anh.
Going to, once again, the port is sitting right here, right in front of the Manila Hotel. And then all of this is within walking distance. And you might want to just start off at one location or the other, and then just make your way walking back. And we're going to talk about each one of these different, each one of these sites that you can see along the way here, right now. First of all, when we dock, we're going to have the Manila Hotel right in front of us. 100 years old, oldest premier hotel in the Philippines. And I thought this was interesting. General MacArthur used this as his residence right before World War II. And there have been many famous people that have stayed in this hotel, presidents, ambassadors, and so forth. Next location is Rizal Park. And you probably spend your entire afternoon here. For sure, it's this beautiful green space in Manila. And it is named after basically kind of like the George Washington of the Philippines. And his name is Jose Rizal. And this park was modeled and created after the mall in Washington, D.C. If you've ever been there, this was the design that they used for this particular park. It's a really beautiful park. There are museums that are in here as well. The National Historical Museum can be found here, as well as others. And that's going to be right in front of the ship. Monument to Jose Rizal is there as well. And beautiful little park. I'm definitely going to wander around there. And once again, it's right in front of the ship. It sits right here, and the ship is just in the lower left-hand corner. And you can wander through that. Next, the Manila Cathedral. And this is where the Archbishop of Manila is. Originally built in 1581, it's burned down numerous times. It was originally made out of wood, now it's made out of stone. It's gone through 7 different renditions. The latest was built in the 60s. That's the Manila Cathedral. Then you have the walled city. There are sections where you'll be able to see the wall. It was built by the Spanish. Originally, Manila was originally a fort for the Spanish colonizers. And you've got Fort Santiago, and you've got the San Agustin Church site, so that's something to keep in mind. Fort San Antonio, it's a landmark. It served as a defense, located in the Intramuros area as well. Then, continuing, some additional sites to keep in mind, you've got the San Agustin Church. And this is one of the oldest stone churches. And I thought this would be really interesting. I don't always go into churches, but that would be a really interesting one, especially because it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
nữa. Này UNESCO nữa. Đi mấy này nè.
Next, Casa Manila. This is another site you can put on your list. And this is not an older structure, but it's a recreation of what casa or a ranch, sort of, what the colonial living used to be like. It's a copy of the 1850s house, and it was built by Melvin Marcos. And yes, there is a shoe closet in there as well.
3,000 pair of shoes.
And then this is the one that really catches my attention. And this is Binondo. This is the oldest Chinese or Chinatown
in the world.
Wow. And I thought, how interesting would that be?
Oldest
This place where the Chinese immigrants converted to Catholicism.
Oh, really?
And the Chinese were brought in, as well as many immigrants to work in the Manila area. And this is where they settled. And this little area was set aside
for
for
amazing
them
food.
to grow their communities. And there's some really interesting business or museums that I think are also here that will showcase the history and culture of the Chinese
Located in
people
the heart,
as they have
in the
adapted
heart
to
of China.
Manila. Also, two places you can see wildlife. You've got the bay, Manila Bay, as well. We'll be looking there are orchid that are found. I mean, there are orchid that are found all over the world. All kinds of sea life that are in here. And then, of course, Rizal Park will be another place that you can see wildlife. And then I added this, just because it's right next to us. If you're looking for something to do, there's an ocean park, an oceanarium that sits right next to where our ship is. And I thought, okay, that would be an interesting place to go look at too. 14,000 marine creatures in there. All of this endemic wildlife that's found right here in the Philippines. And that's located right there. Our ship is right up here. There's
Oh,
the Manila
very
Hotel.
nearby.
And then you can see that oceanarium right
Ủa,
off
em
the
có
ship.
xe của
You'll be able
United
to
States
see
ngay
that.
đó luôn.
Oh.
See?
Doing some shopping this
Mall of
this
Asia.
mall in the Philippines. It's called the Mall of Asia,
Huge
and
mall.
that is located. Once again, our ship is sitting. There's Rizal
Oh,
Park.
các
There's the
bạn.
Manila Hotel, and the Mall of Asia is sitting
Vậy
right
đi
down
bộ được
here.
à?
So it's not very far at all.
Wow.
Okay.
Department stores or the mall of
It's shops, food shops.
Food
malls. Yeah,
also.
it's a shopping mall.
Can you walk to it?
I wouldn't do it. I mean, you could.
How far?
Yeah, you could. It's probably a couple miles.
Okay.
I have a feeling it's going to be hot, could be rainy. If you do, bring your umbrella. But I mean, the other walking tour that I showed you, that's probably a couple miles as well.
Đi vô đây rồi.
Có đi rồi, vô trong này ăn ngon
Mall of
lắm.
Asia. And then I thought I'd tell you a little bit
Adobo.
about food.
Kare, kare.
The menu here, you've got the adobo. That is the classic.
This
that's
one
like
is
the
really good. Kare,
hamburger.
kare
It's
is
not a
really
hamburger,
good.
but
Nhưng mà
what a
nó
hamburger
very
is to
fattening.
America, that's what it is. Adobo is their national dish. It's like meat pie in Australia,
Hôm qua
hamburger in America.
lên cái dining room
Carry
hỏi đi
carry
chừng nào
also
có cái
made
adobo
kind
food
of
về Filipino với lại Asian. Nó nói đây là hỏi chef không có. Cái này
And then
good.
I'll give you a few other items here in just a
Khi
second.
qua vô
And
market
then
thì chỗ này
Guapo
hay.
Market, this is kind of like when we were in Vietnam. This is their big marketplace where you can get
Quỳ
some
Á Bồ.
shopping here as well.
Is
for
it close
traditional
by?
crafts.
Chỗ này là bán đồ
Street
kit,
foods.
đồ kit nhưng mà tụi
And that is
quần áo
located
không.
right here. And that one you would have to
Còn gần
take.
cái Fort Santiago
Công
rồi.
phót nữa.
You probably want to take. You can walk all the way to here.
Oh,
By the way, if you do that tour
Okay.
that I
Chắc
showed
là
you,
ở
that walking
Chinatown
tour,
mà.
you're just going to want to walk
Chắc
one
là ở
way
trong
and then catch
Chinatown,
cab.
tại vì cái Binodo là gần kìa.
Probably don't want to walk it both ways. All right, you can
Fancy.
picture this. These are
Sexy.
eight different dishes. If you're looking to try
Giá
some
và kịch.
traditional food, grab a picture of that.
Mì, bánh
This
mì nướng.
lumpia, if you were in Vietnam, you tried their lumpia, that's fresh lumpia,
Yeah.
they call it. It's not deep fried. Here in the Philippines, this is a deep fried
Cái này
lumpia.
đồ ăn mẻ
And then
á.
you got,
Đúng rồi,
The
Spanish.
fancy.
you got
Em nghĩ Spanish
curry
rồi.
curry, that's what that looks like. It's got a peanut sauce
That's
to
very
it.
curry.
And then you have this that has kind of a lime taste to it. And you've got this kind of soup, and that's kind of a sour taste to it. And then the cassava cake, that's well
Make from diếu cà.
dessert, one of the favorite desserts that they eat here. All right, then, as we did
Hello,
a
salamat.
few days ago, I gave you a few basic Tagalog words.
Xài hết.
Sai.
This gets a little crazy.
Como está?
Como está?
Giống như tiếng mẹ.
All right, everybody give
Como
that a
está?
try.
Como está?
Como está?
Very good. Musta. Where are my Filipinos in the audience? Okay, make sure I'm doing this right. Is that correct?
Como está?
She said yes. The other said no. Okay. Goodbye. Paula.
Palem.
That seem right?
Pollen.
Yeah, now remember, I listened to these words. Some of them I knew.
Rasas.
The Malay I
Thank you,
knew.
Rasas.
No.
But these,
Thank
not
you
so
là
much.
không có
So I just
thank you
listened
là
to them and I said, okay, how would I spell that phonetically
Spanish nữa.
if I were to repeat
không có
Tagalog khác, Tagalog khác.
5
Hello.
minutes for people to say this without
Thank you. Oh,
Salamat.
Salamat bồ là tức là
Yeah,
cái dùng
now,
cái tiếng
listen,
lịch sử đó.
I do know po
Salamat.
is
Salamat là
finishes
thank you, đúng
something
rồi.
and it's a way of showing respect for whoever you're speaking with.
Salamat
That's that
po,
little
po
po,
từ
that
Indonesia
little
nó
po
cũng
at the very end.
Salamat po.
Salamat po.
Salamat.
Or you could say salamat.
S-A-L-A-M-A-T. Salamat.
Unless you're talking to the president.
Paki
You probably
Usa.
say salamat.
Paki Usa.
Right.
Không đâu, không phải.
Paki Husa.
Usa.
Pasi Husa.
Paki Usa.
I got a thumbs up, so I know I got it. From the younger one. Sorry.
Bò sen chan na bò.
Bồ dùng chữ bồ là
Every
lịch sử.
time. Pasi
Senchana. Senchana po.
Is that how they teach you in school? Not bad, huh? Because that's how you would say it.
How much?
Percentage.
Để chụp cái này để nói chuyện.
Channel.
Chợ xong hết đó, chụp.
How much?
Macano.
Give that one a try.
Mokono.
No problem. I'm getting thumbs up. Oh, not bad. No comment.
Mokono.
Where?
Saan.
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 Not bad, huh? Saan. Good. So if you were looking for something, you
Heo
could just
tiếng
say
Việt Nam là
where
cú.
and help.
Tù lôn. Tù
Too
lôn.
long.
Too long.
Too long.
Too long.
Too long. Okay, there you go. There are a few words for you. Your basic Tagalog. Hello, goodbye, thank you, please. How do we say good morning? I'm going to add one more.
Oh my God.
All right, that's all I got. Okay, that gives you just a little bit. Now,
Sao đi
Why?
vậy?
the show's not over.
That's
I'm
all.
going to jump into my Giants in the Pacific.
Đi.
This is what
Cái
I
này
do.
nữa.
Cái gì kia?
Cái này nè, bây giờ cái này nè.
And then,
Nhắc số thì có đây đâu đó.
Số rồi.
Không có, nó lộn, nó lộn, nó lộn. Nó
I'm
lộn.
going to come down and take questions. Right. Okay.
Sao heo không có?
All right,
Heo
does
cũng
anybody
không có.
want to see any of those slides up there? The walking map?
Ủa, nhưng mà bà có mà, bà có cái map mi của bà đâu có cần bắt cái map nữa.
Đúng rồi.
Vậy có nhiều chỗ đi nha, ở lót.
I mentioned this. Has anybody seen birds flying around the ship?
Yeah.
There you go.
Ồ,
It's a booby.
Ruby.
It's a brown booby that are found in this area. There are blue-footed boobies. There
Ồ,
are
con
red-footed
booby á,
boobies,
con booty.
and the one we've got is a
Blue-footed
brown
booby này ở
booby.
ở
Anybody get
Galapagos
pictures
có
of this?
ba.
Bert, you got some pictures? It's got that black and then the white.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and there could be another bird that's flying around there too. But here's what you're looking for. You're looking for this white
Yeah, cái
belly,
mình nó quay.
and then you've got that black.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like a black neck and a head,
Nó bay
and then
nhanh
you've
lắm.
got that weird shaped bill. And it almost looks like a black-footed black-footed albatross, but it's not. It's a brown booby, which is a cool bird. And if you've been to Hawaii, then you have seen the blue-footed boobies. And they're called that because they have blue feet
Blue feet.
as well. And we're going to be looking for those once we get in closer to Hawaii. But these, we're still a little bit too far south to see those birds. So these are brown boobies. All right, now back to the giants of the Pacific. First of all, the Pacific is the largest, deepest ocean on the planet.
Pacific Ocean nó
More
lớn.
than 60 million square miles of water. Average depth, 13,000 feet. Covers more than 40% of the Earth's surface. If you were to take all the continents on the planet and put them all together, you would still have room for another continent. That's how big the Pacific Ocean is. And we don't think of it that way because when we're moving through it, we're only seeing a very small amount of space. Actually, on a really clear day, we can see out to the horizon about 10 miles. If you put our ship at the very center of the circle, that and do a little arithmetic, you see that we can see only 300 square miles of ocean at any one time. And this, we're looking at millions of square miles of water. If we look at it, Marianas Trench, this is our first giant of the Pacific. I'm going to talk more about this when I talk about the explorers of the deep, but I just wanted to give you a taste for this. We're going to go past right over the Marianas Trench on our way to Guam. It's the deepest place on Earth, 36,000 feet. That gives you some comparison of it. There's Mount Everest sitting right there. It's deeper than Mount Everest is tall.
Machu Picchu.
Sits right here. We're over here in the Philippines. There's the Marianas Trench. Here's Guam, where we're headed, right here. Just about 120 miles southeast of Guam. We are going to go right over it, which is really cool. Who knows, maybe we will see somebody diving on the Marianas Trench. Well, the first man dive took place in 1960. It was on this vessel called the Trieste. They went down almost to the bottom. 2 individuals on it, Don Walsh, Jacques Picard. Anybody heard that name before? Yeah, that was on Star Trek. That's where they got the name. Or the captain. The Swiss designed, Italian built, and it was launched by the U.S. Navy. That's what it looked like. 60 feet long, and they were right down here in this little bathysphere portion of it. And that whole contraption was untethered, dropped to the deepest place on the planet for the very first time. And I threw this in because I thought, I was looking at that going, well, how did that whole thing go down? Well, the way it works was this, is that the 2 individuals, they went down this tunnel and they got into this bathysphere, 3.5 inches of steel, perfectly round. And they sealed it up. They had one little window, it was an acrylic window that they were able to see out. And this whole contraption down here is completely self-contained. And they carried this whole structure down with them. The pressure, we try to describe the pressure that's down there at the bottom, but it's really almost impossible to understand. 3 Land Rovers on your toe. What does that mean? Lying flat out and having the entire ship pressing down on your chest. It's incomprehensible the amount of pressure that is down there. And anyway, they were right down here at the bottom. They had 2 ballast hoppers here with 12 tons of metal iron shavings that were in it. And they released these when they were at the bottom so that they could come back up again. They also had 22,000 gallons of gasoline on board, except the gasoline wasn't for the same use that we use for our cars. The reason they had gasoline on board is because gasoline is less dense than seawater. And that's what gave them the buoyancy. So they controlled their buoyancy by using these hoppers when they were at the bottom. They released that. The gasoline is less dense than the seawater, and that was how they were able to float before they went down, and it was what got them back up to the top as well. They had magnetic release mechanisms on the bottom here. The entire structure was open. So this tunnel here was open. These water ballast tanks, everything was open. So they could not be, because water is incompressible, they were able to go down, and the pressure on the inside was exactly equal to the pressure on the outside. And that's how they were able to bring this whole contraption down with them. The only place that had to withstand the pressure was this little container right here, the bathysphere, where the 2 divers were. And other than that, everything else, pressure on the inside equal to pressure on the outside. Second man dive took place in 2012, and this was James Cameron. And how many people know this individual? Everybody does, right? And what does he do for a living? He is a filmmaker, and he decided, he's also a lover of the ocean, and he decided that he was going to go down to the deepest spot because nobody had been back in 60 years. So 1960, and if you think about it, that always amazes me, because if you think about that, what happened during that 60-year period? We sent a man to the moon, that's right. We sent a man to the moon. We sent explorers, probes out to Mars. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do our own planet. 100% of Mars has been mapped. We sent Cassini out to Saturn. We sent space capsules, explorers out to the different planets. And yet, even today, we have only mapped 25% of our ocean floor. We still have. And the reason for that is because of the pressure. It is a difficult environment for scientists to work on. Unlike space, which is easier in many respects than our own ocean. In any case, James Cameron, he decided that he was going to go down. But if you're James Cameron, you're not going to go down in the trees. You're going to go down in something much more elaborate. And of course he did. This was his submarine that he took, his submersible. He had batteries that he brought down with him. He had lights. He had probed arms that he brought with him. His ballast, unlike the amount that the trees took, his was only 1,100 pounds. And he had to develop this to be able to withstand that pressure. It's made out of titanium. That's what it looked like. He had a pilot's chamber here, lighting panels, cameras, booms, everything you can imagine there to be filmed, and that's what it looked like when he was down at the very bottom. It took him 7 years to build it. He didn't have a team of thousands of people. There were only 12 people that he used to help him build that. James Cameron is very efficient. There's a comparison between the two. Deep Sea Challenger, only 11.8 tons. Trieste was 150 tons. Single pilot took him 2.5 hours to get down. Trieste much longer than that. And then this, look at all the cameras he took with him. High definition cameras, manipulator arms, samples. He took samples while he was down there as well. Took him, and he spent 3 hours at the bottom. Trieste was only down for 20 minutes. And of course, if you're James Cameron, what are you going to do? You're going to make a movie, and that's exactly what he did. And you can see this movie. It's called Deep Sea Challenge 3D. He tells the whole story of the mission and the dive, but he also tells the whole story of how he created that submarine and what his motivation was to do it. He had to literally invent new materials to be able to do everything that he did. He had to figure out, how do I take a light bulb down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench with all of that pressure? He had to figure out all of that technology. He ended up putting them in oil, which was not impossible to go down. Next, third man dive was in 2019. And this was called the 5 Deeps Expedition. Victor Vescovo, he was a hedge fund manager, and he also had a love, just like James Cameron, of the ocean. And he decided that he was going to go explore the unknown. And that was the deepest dive, and remains the deepest dive in history. And guess what we found at the very bottom? It's in the lower left-hand corner. It was a plastic bag. And I thought, if you were going to create a public awareness campaign for our plastic pollution problem, that would be it. And we just had another dive here a few months ago, and guess what they found? Beer can. At the bottom of the Marianas
Beer
Trench.
can.
Which is really eye-opening for us to see how these materials, these pollutants, end up traveling and getting moved by the ocean, and they can even end up in the deepest spot. 5 Deeps Expedition was all about diving the 5 deepest points in the 5 oceans, and they accomplished that. Fourth man dive, also Victor Vescovo. He had a number of descents on this, and also this expedition took the first woman down to the deepest spot. And that was Catherine Sullivan, who went with him on that expedition. Fifth man dive, That was China. That was a scientific expedition. 6-man dive, Victor Vescovo again, 2021. Ring of Fire 2 expedition. He went back and did it again. And on this mission, he took Don Wright. And Don Wright was the first person of color, the black person to go down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. Deep as anything below 1,200 feet. After that, there is no light. And here are just some thoughts. I thought these would be interesting. In the deep, there's more life than anywhere else on Earth. Does that sound like a place we need to explore? Sure. The deep is larger than all the other habitats on Earth. Ocean floor is an empty plain that covers half of our planet. And remember, we've only explored 25% of this. There are more species of coral in the deep than there are in the shallow tropical seas. Some of these corals can live up to 4,000 years. 3/4 of the world's volcanic activity is found in the deep, mainly along the mid-Atlantic ridge. This is where our crust that we live on, part of the Earth we live on, is spreading. This is where these thermal vents are. We only discovered these thermal vents in the 70s and 80s. And the deep sea vents have as much life as tropical rainforests. Right now, we've identified just a little over 1 million species. As we're learning more and more about life on our planet, scientists think that there are probably 100 million species of life on our planet. That means that we've only discovered 1% of the life on our own planet. China, the Pacific #2. This is called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Not something we're too proud of, but what happens is there are plastics that end up getting caught in these gyres. These plastics are mostly land-based plastics from the entire Pacific Rim, from China, from Japan, all the way through America, here, and all the way down into Mexico. What happens is these plastics end up in the ocean due to runoff, and then they get caught by currents, and these currents will take them out into the Pacific. We're located right here. We're going to be traveling right through these gyres on our way home. And if you see plastics, these plastics, once we get out a little bit further, I think some of the plastics that we're seeing in the water right now are coming off of ships and so forth. But once we get out more in the Pacific Ocean between Guam and Hawaii, when you see plastics, those are plastics that are mostly land-based that have gotten caught in this gyre. We estimate that there are 200 million tons of plastics that are caught in this.
Yeah.
These gyres are growing by the equivalent of 1 football field per second. And these plastics continue to move into the ocean.
Oh.
They'll end up on little islands. They'll look like this. Some of these are fishing floats. And what happens is they biodegrade, or rather they photodegrade, and they break down into smaller and smaller pieces. Much of that 200 million tons actually looks like this. And we're still trying to figure out how we're going to clean up this mess. This was a beach cleanup that we did in Huntington Beach, and you can see just plastic straws, bottle caps, for sure. And one solution, of course, is to reduce. Anybody use those reusable straws for that? A few people use those. Yep, that's one way. And then we're trying to figure out how to clean up all that plastic that's out in the ocean. Nobody has come up with a good solution to it yet, but these are some of the ideas. Skimmers, and we don't know what the viable solution is going to look like, but we're trying to figure that out. Here's the fellow who figured it out. If you know about the giant garbage patch, it's because of this individual, Captain Charlie Moore. He was doing a transpac across the Pacific. It's a race, and he came across this plastic. He didn't have time to check it out, but he came back and discovered that it was much, much bigger than anyone had ever imagined. And he then came home, decided that he was going to create his life's mission around this. He has a nonprofit foundation in Long Beach called Algalita, and he devotes his life to educating people and also doing fundraising and so forth to try to figure out how to clean up this mess. Giant #3 is the Great Barrier Reef. How many people have been here? Anybody ever dived on it?
Yeah, I did.
Few people dived on it. This is the largest living structure on the planet. And there are just some figures to boggle your mind. 70 million football fields of living reef. It's about the size of one of those countries that you see there. Over 1,500 different types of fish, sharks, rays, corals, soft corals, hard corals. The primary structure for the Great Barrier Reef is really only about 9,000 years old. And it began to build up once the sea levels rose. And it's been stable for about 4,000 years now in terms of its primary structure. Largest living organism on the planet. Number 4, this is giant kelp. And how many people have heard of kelp before? How many people have eaten kelp?
Yeah.
You might be
Kelp và
surprised
seaweed.
here, too. Giant kelp,
Keo
this
seaweed
is
hả?
Giống như
the fastest, one of the fastest growing organisms on the planet. It grew up to 2 feet per day. Normally it'll grow to about 150 feet. It'll grow in 60 to 80 feet of water, and then that other part of the kelp will just float on the top. And if you didn't think you used kelp today, take a look at that list. I bet you did. How many people didn't brush their teeth this morning? No, you all brushed your teeth. Good. You used kelp this morning. If you didn't, you're not going to admit it. Beer, ice cream, paint, cosmetics. They extract a product out of it called alginate. And what alginate does, it acts as a smoother or a thickener. So for example, in the U.S., a decade or two ago, we were going through this fat-free
dùng keo để
phase,
làm mỹ phẩm.
where everybody was looking for products that didn't have fat in them. Well, the problem with that, if you don't have fat in ice cream, you basically have milk. And you need to have something that's going to thicken it up and make it smooth. And that's what they use kelp for. It's called alginate. You can look on the labels of your food sources and see if you have been eating alginate. I put this picture in. This is a kelp harvester. Anybody ever heard of a show called Sea Hunt? Or seen it? Mike Nelson. If you look at through some of those episodes, it was on for a few years, and in some of those episodes, you'll see this. That's a kelp harvester. It's like a big lawnmower on the ocean, and that 40 or 50 feet of kelp that's just hanging out at the very top, that will pick it up just like a lawnmower. That's how they harvest kelp. Number 5, this is a Queensland grouper. This is the largest reef-dwelling fish on the planet. These are found in the Australian area, Queensland, New South Wales. That's how big that fish is. That is one big fish. It's protected. Yeah. This one, the Queensland grouper. Largest reef-dwelling fish, and it is now protected because it was so easy to catch. You would think a big fish like that would be easy to catch, but it is because they're not afraid of anything on the reef. And that meant that fishers, skin divers, spear fishers could go in and just take these animals pretty much at will. Number 6, this is the one that lives where I live in Southern California. This is called the giant sea bass. This fish, once again, 9 feet long, can weigh hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And these animals live long lives. And when they live long lives, that means they don't reach sexual maturity until much later in life.
If you go back to the other picture, when it said, one more, yeah, all are born female but can become male. How?
All are born female, and then one becomes male. They're born with the ability, I'll talk about this when I do my reef romance talk, but they're protogynous, and that just means, and that's actually a very common strategy. I'm actually glad you pointed that out. That's actually a very common strategy among marine animals, many different species of marine animals. One that might surprise you, Nemo. Whole other side of Nemo.
Không nói gì vậy?
Cái chuyện cartoon Nemo đó.
It's a survival strategy for them. Because it means that if you lose that dominant individual, they're both, it can be a male or it can be a female.
Grouper này ăn được.
And if you lose that individual, another individual can step up and take the place. And that way you always have a
Bởi
population
vì
of
bà
the
mới hỏi á.
animals that will always be able to reproduce regardless of
Hay á,
whether they're
mày hay à.
losing, that
Thích những cái
dominant
này á.
female or the dominant male, because it goes both
Người ta
ways.
gọi là deep sea fishing
All
như
right,
vậy.
back to the sea bass, giant sea bass, 9 feet, live most common in Southern California. They extend all the way down to Mexico. And for many years, we didn't really know how they reproduced and what the reproductive mechanisms is. If you've ever been to an aquarium and you see fish that are in there and so forth, those aquariums many times are trying to reproduce, especially if they're an endangered species. They're trying to figure out what the reproductive mechanisms are for these animals, and they can be temperature, salinity, it could be the amount of light. There are all kinds of different conditions for that. Well, one aspect that's important to understand is when they do reproduce, and you do have fertilized eggs, where do those juveniles go? And this friend of mine, he figured out this is what they look like, these little guys. He found them, and they dart in and out of sand in estuarine areas. And this is important to know because if we're going to build in Southern California, we're always building. And if we build over these areas, these estuary areas, these animals, we're going to lose these animals. And we just need to, we may choose to lose them, we may choose to build, but we just need to know that this is what we're giving up when we do that. Next is the orcas. These are found in all the temperate and tropical seas. Don't see them a whole lot, not quite sure where they go, where they live, what they do, but occasionally they're going to wash up on the shore. This is in Southern California. They're 36 feet long, giant of the Pacific. And I love that picture. They just look like they're on another planet. This is one that washed up a few years ago. We had another one that washed up this year. And these are kids from USC that are there at the Marine Camp. USC has a Marine Camp on Catalina Island. And they just happened to be there when this oarfish just washed up on the shore. And it was still living. They got some tissue samples from a living oarfish. And it's probably the source of these sea serpent tails. Next is the mola mola. This is an ocean sunfish. Here, and this is the heaviest bony fish on the planet. And isn't that a weird looking animal? We have a really good chance. In fact, I can guarantee we're going to see one of these at some point on this cruise. We're going to be looking for it. They get really, really big, 2,200 pounds. That is a big fish. Humans can interact. I've swam with them. I've dived with them. They just sort of float around in the water, and they've got that funny look on their face. It's almost like a permanent circle for their mouths. They eat jellyfish. 12 feet in length. This makes them kind of weird. They're only 12 feet in length, and then they're wider than they are long. They like jellies. Females lay more eggs than any known vertebrate. 300 million eggs. And they resemble these tiny little miniature pufferfish. This is what we're going to be looking for. These are birds that are picking little parasites and so forth off them. A lot of times birds will land on them. And then you might see something like this. One of the shipmates made that for me, and I promised him I was going to put that in. That's an AI-generated sunfish, not bad, huh? It's cool. Giant manta rays, 2 species, 24 feet across. And to give you an idea of that, that's basically from wingtip to wingtip, that's this entire stage. That's how big these guys are. And they eat plankton, just from coral spawns, just tiny little microscopic zooplankton. How many people have been to Kona? Yeah, I've been to Kona. Has anybody ever swam with these? I knew you were going to raise your hand. That's right, off Kona. So there's a hotel there, right out in front of that hotel. They'll put some food in the water, get it dark, and you can watch these manta rays come in to that feeding station. And what you're seeing in this picture is you're looking from the bottom up, and you've got these skin divers that are that are holding on to rafts, and they're watching these giant manta rays come sweeping through there in this feeding frenzy. And that's what it looks like if you're a diver at the bottom. And you can see these mantas just come sailing over you. Imagine an animal almost as wide as this stage just sailing over the top of you. It's really pretty spectacular. If you don't want to do that, you can see these in aquariums too. This is in Okinawa. They have them, when they feed these guys, they use
Dubai á.
bullfighters to put the food in. Next, whale shark. This is the largest fish in the world. This guy is about as big as a humpback whale. You've been up whale watching and so forth, that's about how big they are. 46 feet long, 48,000 pounds. It's a shark, not a whale. We use the term whale in this sense just to describe the size of this animal. 5 foot wide mouth. And they're, once again, they're feeding, just as the manta rays, they're feeding on fish eggs, larval, plankton, small prey. We don't know their numbers. We do know their numbers went down this year dramatically, and we're not quite sure why, and we don't know, and we're not quite sure where they ended up either. But it's actually not that uncommon. It's not that they all just disappeared, but something happened, the population numbers dropped, and those population numbers can come back up again as well. But that's what they look like when they're feeding. And you can interact with these as well. You can swim with these down in Baja. You can swim with these whale sharks down in the Gulf of California there. That's what it looks like there. That gives you a little bit better idea of the size. That's for school kids, probably 100 school kids there. And by the way, that's not real. That's a float. And you can see these are at aquariums as well. Georgia Aquarium, Okinawa Aquarium. 2. Number 11, this is a basking shark. And I just threw this one in here just because it's such a weird looking animal. Second largest fish in the world, 43 feet. It's been commercially hunted for, not only for food, mostly for liver oil, and of course it's shark finning as well. This is where they just cut off the fin and eat the rest of the animal. It's a pretty brutal way to fish. They've been overexploited. Populations are disappearing as well. But I mean, that animal, if you were swimming in the water and you saw that might scare you. But you can actually interact with these animals positively as well. And they'll even have areas where they're commonly found. This is from the Atlantic Ocean, but they're also found in the Pacific Ocean. And they give you guidance. The only thing you need to know is don't swim in front of it. Because his mouth is so big, yes, you could get caught. Yeah. Next, blue whales. This is the biggest animal. We talked a little bit about them the day before yesterday. 100 feet long, largest animal that ever lived on the planet. California population has actually recovered. Remember, we took in the 1900s, we took over 250,000 of these whales. California population is back again. Other populations, though, now are still much, much lower than they were pre-whaling days. Oh, and by the way, if you want to see these whales, where's the best place to see them? On your way to Disneyland. In Southern California, Newport Beach, we've seen more blue whales this season than we have seen ever. We've had hundreds of blue whales, and not just blue whales, but we've had moms and their calves. And we've seen hundreds of them. And if you're interested in that after the show, I'll tell you who to go with, and also where you can see video of these animals. They're eating 40 million krill a day. No one's ever seen a blue whale give birth. No one's ever seen them mating. We just don't know a whole lot about them. But the calves, of course, are huge. 24-foot baby. That is a big baby. And then I posted this yesterday. Call when they blow, when they exhale, 2-story building, have a cement mixer full of air, heart, blood vessels the size of dinner plates here. And it's so big you could crawl inside its heart and fit inside its heart. And yesterday I told you, or day before yesterday I told you, jawbones the size of goalposts. Next time you're at a football game, look at those goalposts. That's the size of a blue whale's jaws. Next, this giant squid, 50 feet long.
Oh my God.
This animal, this is a real animal. Looks like this, just like an octopus. It's got these little suctions on it, except with a squid, they have a serrated edge. they actually have teeth. And they look like that. That's what its beak looks like. It's as big as your hand, except much, much stronger. It's got eyes the size of soccer balls, and its vision is as good as our vision. Here, they even have lights, they're called photophores, that go around their eyes because they live at depths where there is no light. Found in the Arctic, Atlantic, Pacific, they're almost the size of a whale. That's how big these giant squid, and it's very rare that we get to see these. They're usually found at depth, and sperm whales are covered. This is how we know sperm whales eat them. 2 reasons. They're covered with these marks, these saw marks from the suckers, and then the second thing is, when we open up the sperm whale's stomach, what do we find? Beaks. Those beaks are made out of cartilage and they don't get digested. And we see hundreds of beaks in there. Does anybody know this poem by Lord Alfred Tennyson? Nobody knows this poem anymore. I'm pulling this slide. But anyway, that was probably the beginning, his inspiration for his famous poem called The Kraken. Next, giant jelly lion's mane. This is the longest marine invertebrate, 122 feet long, these tentacles that expand flame. And I thought I'd put that, and we might also see lion's mane. I'd be very surprised if we didn't see lion's mane jelly as well. But I thought I'd put this in just so you could see kind of the weird way these guys reproduce. You have male and female jellyfish, and they release their gametes, and you get a fertilized egg. Here. Pretty normal so far. Then you get a structure called a planula. This planula, though, does not become a juvenile jelly. Instead, what it does is it lands on the bottom of the ocean and it attaches. And it forms this thing called a polyp. And then this polyp grows and it almost looks like a plant. And then what it does is it starts this budding process, which is basically just releasing these petals. And each one of those petals is going to become a jelly. And depending on the sex of that egg, they'll all be either male or female jellies, but they're all clones of each other. And that's how these jellies reproduce. Really kind of strange. Anybody ever been stung by a jelly? Yes. And here's what happens. You've got this little cell here called an operculum. And this operculum has a little trigger on it. And when that tentacle or that operculum brushes against your skin, it's like a little harpoon. And that harpoon is going to fire out. It's under pressure. And you're going to get harpooned. And that's what happens when you get stung. And this little capsule down here has got that toxin or that venom in it. And depending on the jelly, you could have a bad reaction to it, or it could just be an irritating. How many people have been stung before by these jellies? Yeah, I seem to get stung anytime I dive into the water. And if you do get stung, what do they tell you to do? Yeah, don't do it. The reason they tell you to pee on it is because toxins, and this is pretty much true of almost all venoms produced biologically, they are basic. And everybody thinks your urine is acidic, but it's not, it's just neutral. So don't let anybody pee on you. They're messing with you. Giant spider crabs. Take a look at this guy. Those are the legs on that crazy thing. 18 feet across. 3-foot carapace. Weigh up 23 pounds. These are the largest arthropods on the planet, and they live here in the northern Pacific. When they molt, they're crawling out of their shell. This is how they grow, because they have that hard shell. Everybody's eaten crab before they've got that hard shell. Well, for them to increase in size, they do something called molting, where they just literally crawl out of their shell. When they do that, they're very soft. Have you ever had soft shell crab? Yeah. You're eating those crabs in between molts when that shell is soft. And at that stage, they have to just hang out. They find a place to hide because it takes 2 or 3 days for that shell to get hard again. And then that's another example of molting. There's another one crawling down. That's between 2 molts. I mean, they're quite dramatic in size. And the way they reproduce here is they have all their eggs, and the female will carry those eggs around on her belly. And when that egg hatches, that's what that looks like. And for crustaceans, this is called the zoea. And this character up here is what crabs look like, it's what barnacles look like. You can't tell the difference whether this is going to become a crab or it's going to become a barnacle. They all look like that. And then they go through a whole series of stages. With a lobster, it goes through 9 different stages of development. And you don't really recognize that animal until it gets back to about the 7th or 8th stage. And they go through all these different morphs. And this is why for aquariums and for marine biologists it's so difficult, because we try to figure out what is the trigger between each one of those life stages. And it could be many different environmental changes, and that's the big mystery for biologists trying to solve that. Here's my creepy one. We're going to go through this fast just because it's really creepy.
Oh, giant.
This is an isopod. This is the largest isopod on the planet. Everybody know what a pill bug is? Yeah, that little roly-poly. They call them different names depending on where you're from. This is a giant one. These are 3 feet long. They look like that.
Ooh.
They hang out on the bottom of the ocean at depths of 7,000 to 8,000 feet, and they're waiting for a whale to fall down. And when those whales fall down, or any other kind of marine life, they're going to sit down there, and that's what they do. They clean up the bottom of the ocean. They scavenge. They're young. They carry on their bottom. The mom carries them inside of her stomach. You can see them there just crawling around.
What is it?
Really, really creepy. And then her babies eat their way out of their mom's stomach. And that is why I move on. It's just too creepy. All right, here's one of my favorites, giant clams. These are the largest mollusks on Earth, and they live right in this area that we're traveling through. Right now, they can be almost 600 pounds. These giant clams, I love them. And you can see all those different colors. That's their fleshy part that's inside. That's called the mantle. And this is where, just like with fish gills, fish exchange oxygen through their gills. Well, for mollusks, they exchange it through their mantles. And so they'll open themselves up, and they'll put that mantle up, and they're grabbing oxygen that's in the water. But they also have something really special. They have algae inside of their tissues. And depending on the kind of algae, it'll change this color. So you can have these beautiful colors that are coming from the algae, because what these mollusks are doing is they're producing sugar through photosynthesis. And so what do plants do? Plants, they've got their leaves. We saw a whole bunch of that, right? As we're going through this tropical jungle. So they've got their leaves, the sun hits the leaves, and we think it's making oxygen, but to the plants, oxygen is a toxin and will kill the plant. So they're getting rid of it, just like for us, carbon dioxide. If we're in a room and there's only carbon dioxide, we die. Plants are in a room and there's only oxygen, they die. So they're getting rid of the oxygen. What they're really after is sugar. That's what they're after. And that's what's going on here with these giant clams. Those algae that are inside of their tissues are producing sugar for them. And of course, they've been hunted almost to extinction as well. And we're hoping that aquaculture can help with that. There are different organizations. Florida they have done more with aquaculture than any other place in the United States, and they are absolutely the masters of it. Next, giant Pacific octopus. Anybody see My Octopus Teacher? Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows. If you haven't seen it, it's a great one. They can be up to 15 feet in length, 110 pounds. Reproduce, they live in dens here, and the females, they don't live very long. They only live a few years, and when the female gets towards the end of her life, she'll find a den that's just perfect, and she'll lay her eggs, and she'll hang them off of this den, this perfect den, and then she'll sit there and take care of those eggs, aerating them and so forth. It can take up to 6 months that she'll stay there, and she'll never leave that den, and her body, of course, will begin to fall apart. While she's in there, the male that fertilized the eggs, the male dies immediately. The female lives for another 5 or 6 months taking care of those eggs. And that's what a little baby octopus looks like. Yay. And my final one are the red
Yosemite.
here. And I put these in, even though they're not ocean-based, I thought I'd put them in because they are connected to the ocean environment. How many people have seen redwoods, by the way? Excellent. These trees can reach 300 feet in height. The tallest is over 400 feet. They can live 500 to 700 years on average. The oldest, 2,000 years. Pretty amazing. And they grow to these heights just because of the environment that is produced by the Pacific Ocean. It's a cold, moist temperature. And they are so tall that they can create their own
Mấy
rain.
đứa trong
I thought I'd add this. Anybody ever driven through India?
VSC đó, nó chụp mấy hình này hoài.
You can see these redwoods. If you ever do decide to do it, my favorite park is Jedediah Smith Redwoods. There's a national park, but Jedediah, I think, is the absolute best. And I've run out of time.
Mình chưa đi mấy chỗ này, chứ mấy chỗ này hay lắm.
Here. All right, folks. I'll leave you with this. My last joke. What do you call a mother whale who just gave birth? You call her decaffeinated.
Decaffeinated.
That's good. All right, have a great day, Manila. Thanks for coming, and I'll see you around town tomorrow. Oh, around the ship. I'm going to finish up here, and I'm going to come out if you've got any questions.
Ông này, ông